back again with our good friend Murad, and we're going and unpacking the Quran as you've never seen it before. We're looking at the Arabic as the author intended, which is what we have to do if we're linguists, which is what we have to do if we're translators. But what translators have not done, and don't blame them, don't get upset with them. They had to use the words that were given them by the standard Islamic narrative, that which Islam has imposed on them for I don't say 1400 years. I would suggest it's 12 to 1300 years. And that is what they want. The Muslims want you to, how you want, they want you to translate these words. Murad, however, is not imposed by the standard Islamic narrative. He doesn't care about the standard Islamic narrative. He doesn't care what Muslims believe today or for the last 1200 years. He wanted us to go back to what the original authors intended. That's what a good historian does. That's what a good archaeologist does. And that's what a good linguist should do, or in this case, a translator should do. So that's why I'm excited by this, because we've said that, haven't we, Murad? We've always said that you go back to the original text, you go back to the original documents, you go back to the original building, you go back to the original groundwork, and you go back to see what was actually on the ground in the 7th and 8th century. And you're doing that here.
Yes, exactly. And it's very surprising to me if someone says, well, what does a certain word in the Quran means? I tell him, well, don't look at Ibn Kathir. The Quran is a big book. Look at this very same word in every single context. You will find it like maybe 4 times or 5 times. That will make the job much easier for you to pinpoint exactly what this word means. And that's what I've done. I've created the concordance from scratch, and I kept doing this. I always say in my mind, I was playing chess with the Quran. The Quran makes this move, I make this move.
Yeah.
And when I choose a word, I do not choose it again. I do not duplicate it. So let's say I use the word transcribe for nasakha, it means this word, I should not use it again. This is clumsiness. I should look for another word, just like in the Arabic, there is another word. That's what happened.
Okay. So we're going to look at a second category, and this you call Bible obsessions. What do you mean by that? Before we get into it, just kind of explain what you mean, or why don't you just start with the PowerPoint and we'll get right into it.
Okay, I will share it right now. This category is Bible obsession. You see, Quran translators, they are kind of obsessed with the Bible. They have biblical phrases inside of their head, whether they know it or not. And most of these phrases come from the King James Bible. A very good example, it's not mentioned here, but I will just say it right off the top of my head, is about selling Joseph. In a lot of translations, they have it as 30 pieces of silver, when in Arabic, it doesn't have 30 or pieces or silver. It has dirhams, which is problematic because the dirham was not yet invented. That's one thing.
Hold on a minute. That is exciting what you're saying. I mean, this is the one of the real problems. Dirham counted out is what it says specifically. And when you look at us, we know where the coins are. We can see the coins. The dirham does not come into existence until at least the time of Muawiya, when he coined that term, dirham, which comes from the Byzantine drachma, the drachmas, which were quite normal. That is the Greek or Syriac reference for the coin that then was made into dirham. So if Muawiya, who comes to power in 661, and if Muhammad died in 630, that's 30 years later. There is no dirham at all prior to 661 because the Arabs didn't have their own mints. They didn't have their own coinage that early. You have to be a caliph to be able to have a mint that early. Now we're talking about Joseph. Joseph, he lived in VC, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I have seen Islamic awareness try to combat this, and they shot themselves in the foot. It's very bad. The Quran just says dirham, which is uh, which is wrong historically.
Not only are dirhams coins, there was no coinage at the time of Joseph in 1800 BC. Coins didn't, they were not introduced until the Lydians introduced them. And that was about the 7th century BC. So you can see there was no coinage that earlier. It was nothing more than weighted measures.
I think it's 30 pieces of silver.
30 pieces of silver, which is a weighted measure. which is exactly what would have existed at the time of David in 1800 BC, but not coins. So not only do they get the wrong type of exchange in the Quranic context, but they get the wrong name for the coins. The coins that they do put in there are 30 years too late, unless, of course, Muhammad was prophetic and he's talking about a prophecy of what it's going to be in the future. Now we see that they made that word wrong and they got that into it. What other obsessions do they have, Murad?
Yeah, and also I will now jump to this obsession, but one last point is that the Quran also has the wrong description. It says darahim ma'dudat, meaning they are counted out, not their weight. They should weigh the coin, not the coins, but the pieces of silver at the time of Joseph. It's based on weighing them, not on counting them. That's
Counting
the
out by
idea.
definition means it's coins. You're right. That shows it right there that these are coins and dirhams are coins and they are counted out, but not until 661 AD.
Exactly. Now we will go to another Bible obsession. This is something very subtle. This is something it's not a big problem, but it shows you the psyche of the translator and how he is actually really thinking about the Bible and the biblical obsession that he has. This word حبا, what does it mean? وأخرجنا منها حبا here. They say green. Again, this is the clear Quran and Sahih International. Green is correct. This is perfect. This is, you get bread from this, from hab. Now here, the very same word, مثقال حبة من خردل. What does habba mean here? It should be green, a grain of mustard. But as you can see here, it says mustard seed. In any Quran translation, you will have it as mustard seed. Why? Because in the back of their mind, they recall the word mustard seed from the Bible. So they say the Bible is corrupt, but it's in the back of their mind. It should be a grain of mustard, just like in my translation. Habba is grain. Here again, habbatin min khardal, they have it as mustard seed. The word seed in Arabic is bidhra. So budhur are seeds. This is the correct word for seed, not habba. Is it a big mistake? No, but it reveals how weak of a translator they are, and that manifests itself throughout their entire translations. That's what's going on. It should be a grain of mustard, but you can see here how these people, they just have the recall the biblical phrases from their mind. Mustard seed, 30 pieces of silver with Joseph, and other stuff with Jesus. They say he healed the leper, and the Quran never says leper. He says two other. Jesus in the Quran actually healed two other diseases, not like the ones in the Bible. But I'm just having this one here with biblical obsession, only this example, and I get back to you to hear your opinion.
This is exciting. This is great. I'll tell you why. I did a debate a number of years ago with a Muslim scholar, and he was trying to tell me that the mustard seed is, Jesus uses the mustard seed as the smallest seed, and therefore the largest tree, and yet it is not the smallest seed. There are seeds that are smaller than the mustard seed, proving that the Bible is incorrect. Well, here you find that the Muslims, in their intention to follow what the King James Version has done, has borrowed mustard without thinking through, because in this context, it is supposed to be the smallest, the weight. The deed is the smallest that you can imagine. Yet, when in Allah, He will bring forth, and He will give you in the rock or in the heavens or on the earth. Allah will bring it forth, proving that Allah's might is showing His power. Doesn't matter how small it is. So the same idea that we find in the Bible is being applied here in the Quran, and to give further emphasis to give more weight to it, they put mustard there, following what the King James has done. In other words, they've fallen into the same error, if that is an error. Of course, as it is in the King James, or even when Christ was using it, it was considered at that time to be the smallest seed that goes into the biggest object as a contrast. In this case, they have mistranslated it completely just for the sake of following along with what the world knows because of the biblical context of what Christ was saying about the mustard seed. I love that. That's fascinating. But again, as you say, we must go back to what the original author said. Throw mustard out there. It's
Yeah, exactly. I just came back to you here. So that's the idea. The word bidra means seed, but the word hab means grain. It should be a grain of mustard, but of course they will never do that. They just want it to be closer to the Bible. It's as if they have in the back of their mind something like, we already have a lot of problems with the Western world. We don't want to make even deeper problems. So let's make it mustard seed. Let's make it 30 pieces of silver with Joseph. Let's make stuff easier for people to consume. That's in the back of their mind. As you can see, these people, they are doing these translations for people to convert to Islam, not to get the truth out. Allah is their target audience, not the English speakers.
That's what should be their audience. They should be holding to or beholden to his text and to his the words that he has intended, if he never did. Obviously, they haven't. This is exciting. Thanks, Murad. This Bible obsession, trying to, in some ways, this is an apologetical translation, trying to bring on and to bring Christians on board to say, see, we've got the same word, we've got the same context. And of course, the story of Joseph, without even thinking, they use the wrong measure of coinage. In fact, they shouldn't have even used coins because there were no coins in 1800 BC. But these are the errors that you're bringing up, and that's why it's so good to go back to the original text, go back to the original words, and we're finding where this is very much the case. Listen, Murad, this is exciting. The next one we're going to be going into is what?
It's the sin obsession. This is clear verses that these people, when they translate, they go back to the sin and they throw the Arabic dictionary and the linguistics under the bus.
For those who don't know what he's talking about, that's a standard Islamic narrative, and of course, as we love to joke, it's the sin. And this is another sin. The sin has holes in it. Here we're going to go and show how much of the standard Islamic narrative imposes itself on what they translate or how they translate. For the next time, then we'll get into that. Come on board. Murad over here, me over here, thousands of miles apart, or right next door. God bless you, Murad. Thanks so much for coming on board. This has been fun.
Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Smith. It's always a pleasure.
Jay and Murad, over and out.